Disclaimer. This episode contains graphic descriptions of violence that may be disturbing to some listeners. Please be advised.
Hello.
What's up?
I'm Taylor.
I'm Mandy.
I'm Amanda.
This is Pop, Crime, and Wine.
Welcome.
Welcome to the Thunderdome. What if we whispered the whole time? Could people hear us?
I think that they could.
I don't know. Maybe we should try it.
Okay, all right, so...
It's like the whisper song.
I don't like it.
The thong song.
That's not the same thing as...
What?
Thong.
They're from the same band.
Like it when a beat go. Like it when a booty go.
It's
Taylor
definitely
knows
from
it.
the same band.
Yeah.
It's the
All
Yin
right.
Yang Twins.
Who is our sponsor this week?
Our sponsor this week was Linda. Hi, Linda.
Linda, make it nice by the tray.
For the win,
Linda.
Linda.
But who's Linda?
Linda is one of my clients, and her husband actually makes the wine.
Oh, wow.
Ooh,
So
local.
we get
This
to have
is
a
our
local
very
wine.
first homemade wine.
And it's our very first white wine. So they made us some Chardonnay.
Chardonnay.
I'm gonna say that he made it specifically for us, but
There's a bald eagle on the label, and I love it.
it is. So they are. They live in Auburntown, Tennessee, and they met at Auburn University, and so they're all about the Auburn.
I'm going to be honest. I don't know where that is.
It's in Alabama, and she.
I thought you just said Tennessee.
No, but they met at Auburn University, which is in
Oh, yes.
Alabama.
But Auburn Town?
Auburntown. My mom actually used to live there. Ooh, nice pop.
Mediocre at best.
Yeah, it was okay. It was like a 6.5.
I feel like it was an
out of 10, yeah.
easier pop than what we've had lately. So.
Very smooth. I like this cork.
I am going to confess that she also gave me a bottle of the red wine, and my husband and I drank it. But she gave it to me.
What in the world,
All right.
Amanda?
Okay.
I was
Let's
about to
just-
say I'm not really a huge white wine fan, but you know when someone gifts you...
She gave us this wine to do on the podcast, and then she gave me the red wine because
Sure.
I told her
It wasn't
afterwards.
the other way around.
No, I promise.
We get it.
And
It's fine. I'm not even offended at all.
it smells delicious.
It smells very grapey. Oh, not bad. Not bad. I'm not even lying.
Hey, you know what?
Ooh.
I hate Chardonnay, but this tastes delicious.
This is really
This is
good.
really
That's
good.
really weird.
It's probably because it's homemade.
Wait, Linda, I'm so sorry.
Linda.
I fully expected to hate this wine.
Linda, we love it. Oh my
it
God,
is so
Linda.
We had like a conversation about how we were going to pretend like we liked it, but all of
But
our
this is
faces,
good.
as soon as we tasted it, we were like,
Oh,
wow.
it is really
It's
good.
very
actually.
much like green grapes. You know what I mean?
Especially for
Like
for
that's what it reminds me of.
a
Sour.
Chardonnay. Usually it's very like gasoline-y almost to me. But that tastes like really smooth.
Yeah, it's very smooth. It
It's not too strong. Like it doesn't like
Yeah, it doesn't give you
dry
that
out
weird...
my nostrils.
Yeah, it doesn't have that like super strong dryness
Yeah.
that some
Yeah.
Chardonnays have.
Doesn't hit you right in the back of the mouth.
Ooh.
Yep.
All right, that's sexual for sure.
But I like it.
But I like it.
I absolutely love Linda, and we have
Invite her up.
Yeah, here, Chuck, come here. Go on.
Sometimes she needs to be invited.
Just like a vampire.
Yeah, she's like, I need to be invited, and then like
Up to the bed.
Yep.
Also, I just want everyone to know that when we record in this room, usually Mandy steals the bed, and I stole it first.
She called shotgun, and I said that's fair
I did. So
because I had a brother growing up. So fair is
She
fair.
understands.
that's how it works.
I mean, I'm not gonna lie. Like we did probably wrestle or fist fight for it at least a few times.
That's what we should do from now on. This is Taylor's bed, so we should just fight.
Yeah, why don't I get the bed? It is my bed.
No, that doesn't seem right.
Yeah, I don't
You
think
get it
that's
every night.
You invited us. We're guests here.
We're guests
We're
in
guests
your room.
Oh, this wine is so good. I'm just gonna
Yeah.
keep drinking it.
Yeah, Linda.
I'm in awe. Man,
Linda,
I
you
should've-
did good. Also, I take it back,
more.
Mark,
Actually, it's-
because this is fine. Thank you, Linda. All right, what crime do we have?
So, Linda also gave me a hometown murder that I'm going to talk about. So, I think it's pretty fun. And, well, I don't know if it's technically a hometown murder, but she lived in this town.
I was going to say whose hometown, but I understand now.
Yes. So I don't know if this is her hometown. I don't remember exactly where she's from, but I do know that she lived in this town. So she was able to tell me a little bit about
Is this Tennessee?
No, it's Alabama.
Oh.
At
least it's not Florida.
Yeah, finally.
It's like second time in a row it's not Florida.
I get excited when things don't happen in Florida because everything happens in Florida. Okay, so let's go into the crime, right? Do you guys want to yell about
Slide
true crime?
right into it.
Slide into these crimes. Mandy, where's your true crime scream?
I can't do it.
Do it.
I can't do it.
You can.
It's not good. See, I told you.
You're trying too hard now. You just gotta like lightly.
No, it still sounds
sounded
sexual.
more like a moan.
It's better.
Yeah.
That's okay.
Well,
Anyway,
We'll get back to it.
yeah, we'll work on that. So,
She'll practice.
I'm so sad now.
okay, so I'm going to talk about the Wilson murder trial. At almost exactly 9:30 p.m. on the evening of May 22nd, 1992, Huntsville police were notified by a 911 dispatcher of a possible burglary in progress.
Did you say 1992?
1992.
All right.
With a injured victim at the scene. The location was Boulder Circle, and that was like a super nice neighborhood nestled in the mountains overlooking Huntsville, Alabama.
There's mountains in Alabama?
I don't know.
I guess so.
I mean, there's, I guess.
Okay. As you were.
I think that I'm from Florida, so anything that's higher than 10 feet is a mountain to me. I'm like, oh, look at that mountain. My husband's like, that's a hill.
Oh my gosh, that's what Sam says.
Really?
Like in New Zealand, I was like, oh my gosh, these mountains. And he's like, these are hills. And I'm like, but what is the actual difference between a mountain and a hill? And I Googled it, and there isn't. Like, people just
depends on
there's
where you
not
are.
an actual, height that is the difference.
Well, because it like depends on where you start.
yeah.
Like in
that's
Wisconsin, we're like 300 feet above sea level. So anything above that, like the garbage hill in my hometown, we call that the
Garbage Hill?
Yeah, the garbage hill. Like that's
yeah,
where
like
the boundary is.
yeah.
You know. Anyway, it's a mountain.
Yeah, so there's mountains. Maybe it's garbage mountains in
Garbage
Alabama.
mountain in Alabama.
No offense to people in Alabama.
Oh,
You have
man.
garbage mountains.
Garbage mountains in Alabama. 'Cause they're all garbage. You're garbage.
Everyone is garbage.
Everyone's garbage.
So I am going to do it again like I did previously, but the murder happens pretty quickly. So let's just throw in that the police arrive and they discover the body of a male, and his name was Jack Wilson, and he was lying in the upstairs hallway. He'd been brutally murdered with a baseball bat that was found lying nearby. Homicide detectives began searching everywhere in the house, and the police dogs were there to sniff out anything. And it started to become like they were trying to figure it all out, and then it became one of the most notorious murder cases in Huntsville history. Which, when I was researching it, I was like, "Oh shit! Like, this is super cool."
Huntsville's a big city for Alabama.
Yeah,
I mean,
You see a lot of signs on the highway pointing towards Huntsville, and you know if it's like one of those
Right,
cities,
it's gotta be
that
pretty
it's
big.
got to be somewhat large.
okay, so this is a pretty big murder.
is it the capital of Alabama?
Don't ask me these questions, Amanda.
I feel like Birmingham is probably more likely
Yes,
to be the capital.
Birmingham, I think is. Sorry, I get confused by the two because I've gone to both.
They're all the same.
But I think we see more signs for Huntsville because it's closer to us. Like Huntsville's only like an hour and a half away.
Right,
Actually-
Birmingham's like 6 hours, right?
The capital of Alabama
Tuscaloosa?
is Montgomery.
We should know these things.
Nah.
I did once. I took a test in like 2nd or 3rd grade or something for capitals.
I took a college geography course. Of course, I for sure should know this.
I feel like
Which was like 2 years ago.
my 2.5-year-old.
Yeah.
I feel like my 2.5-year-old nephew probably would be like, "Oh, this is
There's
the
Montgomery,
capital. How do you
Alabama.
know
Montgomery,
this?"
obviously.
Sure.
You see?
It's fine. We've been drinking this wine for a good couple
We can't
minutes
blame it
now.
on the pre-wine every time.
Yeah, we did have pre-wine as well.
They don't need to know that.
Listen, this is what I'm saying.
Why?
We can't blame it on pre-wine
But we
anymore.
can.
We sound like
tonight.
alcoholics.
Yeah, only every 5th episode can we talk about pre-wine.
We sound like total. We're like, oh yeah, we had wine, and then we had
Pre-wine,
wine, and then we're
we
gonna
had
have
our
after
we had our
wine.
breakfast wine, and then our lunch wine, and then our
We're like
pre-wine.
hobbits. We have like 11sies.
I compare myself to hobbits all the time. I
Second
did compare my
wine.
feet to hobbits that like 2 episodes ago.
Yeah, but you don't have hobbit
Also
meat.
with meals. I do have second breakfast and snack and tea time and lunch and
What's
dinner.
4th meal? Is
And
that
supper.
Taco Bell?
I think
Taco Bell can be
but
But
what
what
is
is-
I think that's
anytime.
the
What
fourth.
is their slogan is like 4th meal, right?
I think that was a thing at one point.
It stuck with me.
Okay, maybe we should just keep going.
Mandy, how do you not know this? I feel like you're the Taco Bell queen.
Oh, I was like, because they never talked about Taco Bell in Lord of the Rings.
She's in a whole nother realm.
Sorry.
Okay,
Yeah, I'm in the Shire.
so let's talk about this murder. Sorry, we just keep getting off topic.
Okay, so he's brutally murdered with a baseball bat nearby.
They think so, yes. So they start talking to neighbors and trying to figure out what happened. Wilson had left his office around 4 p.m. He was a dentist. And he changed clothes and went outside to his front yard. And neighbors saw him like putting a campaign sign in the ground with a baseball bat. He took a stepladder from the garage, carried it upstairs, removed a smoke detector from the ceiling, which they later found on the bed, disassembled.
How do they know this?
Disassembled. The neighbors saw him doing these things, and then they found these
That's a
things
neighbor
later.
creeping on them like this. He's in his own fucking house.
Yeah.
I creep on my neighbors all the time.
Maybe they don't
Inside
have-
of their house?
Maybe they don't have blinds.
But
I've
like,
stayed at people's houses that don't have blinds, and it
Yeah.
freaks me out the whole time.
Okay.
Some people don't think that it's a thing. So they saw him around 4:30. They think that at that time he was like surprised by someone that was already in the house, and the assailant grabbed the baseball bat and began beating the doctor. After the doctor collapsed to the floor, the assailant stabbed him twice with a knife.
he's a dentist.
Still a doctor.
Oh, okay. I thought you just got them mixed up.
No.
Sorry.
I mean, you
I hope we don't offend any dentists out
Yeah.
there.
dentists already have the highest suicide rate out of anyone.
Oh gosh, really?
Yeah, because people don't think that they're real doctors.
I don't think that's the reason.
I don't know.
It's all that tartar buildup.
It's all the tartar. It's the plaque.
And everybody hates going
Nobody
to the
flosses.
dentist. Like
It's
nobody
True, everyone
actually
hates
gets
going there.
I mean, I love going to the dentist, but I'm a rarity.
Because you get a clean bill of health. I do not.
Yeah, that's.
I did my last
check.
checkup and I felt like and then when they tell you that you do a good job and they're like, wow, there's no plaque buildup. And you're like, oh, this is what it must feel like. This is what it feels like. It's like a gold star.
That's why I don't go anymore.
Yeah, that's not the way to do it. That's not the adult thing to do.
That's okay. I didn't go for like 7 years because I didn't
was
have
4
dental
years.
insurance.
I don't
Yeah.
have dental insurance,
Yeah.
so that's why I don't go.
I didn't go for 7 years.
Because that
and
shit
then
is expensive.
It's so expensive.
So I just brush my
Even
teeth.
with insurance, it's expensive. And after I went for 7 years, I got my first cavity.
Oh, I'm playing my tiny little
Yeah, I don't
violin
feel
for
bad for
you.
you at all.
I was so sad. They were like, "You have a cavity," and I was like, "Oh no, I've never had one."
Okay,
before."
Amanda, keep going.
I love dentists, BT dubs. So they thought it was a burglary. They thought it was a burglary originally, but then they started realizing that there weren't any typical signs. So there weren't any like open drawers or nothing had been ransacked. Like literally everything was normal except for the fact that someone had been murdered in the house. So then they started to decide that it was an inside job. And then once we get to the suspects, the widow, Betty Wilson, was too upset to be questioned. And so later on, they were able to find out that she had lunch with her husband that day around 12. And then he went back to work, and then she went shopping, and they were supposed to go on a trip, and they like had all of these things. And then she was supposed to come home but she had to go to her like Alcoholics Anonymous meeting, and then eventually she got home at 9:30 and she discovered that her husband's body was laying there. She went next door and called 911, which I don't know why she didn't call it inside of the house, but I guess
Maybe her phone wasn't working.
maybe
Maybe they didn't have one.
or maybe she wanted to like show face and like look like she was upset.
Oh, did she do it?
I don't think so. I don't know. We'll get to it.
Okay.
So, but I'm talking about all the possible suspects right now. So,
Okay.
they use the
It could
credit.
also like be you don't want to be around a dead body, but I feel like if it's your husband, you would probably not mind it. You'd be like, okay, I've got to stay here with him,
I don't
even
know
though he's
how
not
I'd
there.
react.
I mean, he was brutally
run
murdered.
away.
I probably would not want to be.
You know,
in
she
it.
was probably afraid someone was still in the house.
That's
true,
a good
yeah.
point. I mean, you're always the number one suspect, like whoever
If you
is
find a body,
closest.
yeah.
So, but I'm sure that she wasn't thinking about that. She was probably like, "Oh shit, my husband was murdered. What do I do?" Like, and I think I would probably go to the safest place, which
Yeah.
might be a
Right,
neighbor.
next door.
Unless they did it.
Boom, boom, boom.
You just never know.
You never know.
It's always the nicest people.
He didn't look like he would ever do that.
He wouldn't hurt a fly.
So the credit card receipts and eyewitnesses were able to identify or verify where she'd been all day. There was a 30-minute period around 2:30 that they couldn't figure out, and then there was also between 5 and 5:30 that she couldn't figure out, or that they couldn't figure out where she was. But I mean, I'm sure that she was probably driving or something, you
Right?
know?
Or, like-
those are like random times to
Yeah.
Right.
To not be accounted for.
yeah, so they went through the whole family. They asked everybody where they'd been, and everyone had alibis. So they didn't know what was going on. And then the first break in the case was that a woman called concerned about a friend of hers. His name was James White. And while he was drunk, he'd been
Same initials.
Oh.
Jack Wilson. John White.
James White.
James White.
Okay.
Yeah.
James White.
Jack
So that
Wilson.
is weird. He was super drunk and was talking about how he'd killed a doctor in Huntsville. Maybe he was a doctor and not a dentist. Maybe I got confused. Linda told me he was
Dentists
a
are
dentist.
doctors.
I don't know.
He
We'll
was
see.
some sort of doctor.
He was some kind of doctor. He was an MD.
Periodontal.
Maybe he.
He was an orthodontist.
Yeah. Ooh.
Or
maybe,
a gynecologist. One of the
That's
two.
Not up
maybe
the
he
mouth.
was an ER doctor.
No, did we say it has to be the mouth?
No, but I thought we were talking about the dentist.
Oh.
He was.
I was like, why do we go to gynecologists all of a
There's
sudden?
lips
That's a
down
totally
there
different,
too.
a different. But there's no teeth unless
You
you're.
don't have teeth?
Oh God!
I'm just kidding. Yours doesn't have teeth?
Like a horror film.
That was on like. Wasn't that on a movie?
It's called Teeth.
Stop it.
Stop!
Quit.
Yeah, there's
Will they,
a
like,
horror
chop
film,
their
and
penises
it's
off?
called Teeth, and
like,
it's this
all
woman
right.
who like murders people with her vagina.
Jesus!
Wow.
Yeah, and it had teeth in it.
We can't talk
We
about
must
this right
watch
now.
that.
It's on
Do a
Netflix.
full
I
We
think.
will talk about this after this podcast.
I never saw it because
Oh.
I was like, but the like movie poster is like her in a bathtub.
Oh.
Have you guys not?
Never.
Obviously not. If I am this shocked about it.
I worked at Blockbuster. I can't like I know weird things about movies.
Was this from like the 80s? It sounds like an 80s thriller.
No, it's definitely like early 2000s.
Really?
For sure. Anyway, it was like a B film. You know how those horror films are. So dude got drunk a lot, started talking about how he was like that he murdered this doctor. And it was like he just like kept talking about how he was infatuated with a lady by the name of Peggy Lowe. And she had recruited him to murder her twin sister's husband in Huntsville. And the lady that called in was like, I'm pretty sure that this isn't real, but he just kept talking about it. And so he like
Called the police?
Yeah, so she called the police and told them. And she was like, I don't think that this is real, but like he just keeps talking about how he murdered some doctor. And the Huntsville police started like they heard of it and then very quickly were able to establish that Peggy Lowe was Betty Wilson's twin sister.
Uh-oh.
Dun dun dun.
Yeah. Which was the wife of
Yep.
Jack.
Jack Wilson.
James Wilson, right?
James.
Why do I keep thinking Jack?
You
Why do
keep
you
wanting
keep
to put like
saying?
Jack White, Jack Wilson. There's no Jack, right?
I thought it was Jack Wilson
It's
and
definitely
James
Jack
White.
Wilson.
Oh, it is?
Yeah.
Oh,
You got me
damn.
confused.
I'm sorry.
The murder
You said
of
Jack White last time, which then I was thinking of Jack White.
No, I said
And so then
Jack
every time
Wilson
you said Jack
and
since,
John White.
Jack Wilson.
Yeah.
James,
James
White.
White.
But I always got the Jack right.
all the J's.
Oh, great at Jack's.
Great at Jack's. I'm actually not.
So they decided that they were going to go and visit Mr. White. So they go and they talk to James Dennison White. He was a 42-year-old Vietnam veteran who had a history of mental disorders and antisocial behavior caused largely by drug and alcohol abuse. So he'd been in a number of mental institutions as well as serving time in jail. One time while he was serving jail time for selling drugs, he escaped and was captured almost a year later in Arkansas, where he was involved in kidnapping a man and his wife. But he just like kept getting out based on
What
mental.
did they do with that husband and wife?
He just kidnapped them.
And then let him go?
Yeah, he was like, caught while kidnapping them.
Oh, shit. Okay.
So
Doesn't look good.
but he suffered from delusions and unable to separate fact from fantasy. So he was like literally mentally ill. And they were able to like look at the history of how he was mentally ill because he kept having all these like situations. And every time that they would ask him a question about the case, he would say like, oh no, I don't know anything about that. And then eventually he would be like, oh yeah, I did that. But then they would start asking him and he would be like, no, I didn't do that. And then he was like, oh, but I did do that. And so like he kept saying, yes, I did, but no, I didn't. And he would like admit to some things. And then he would like later on be like, oh no, I did it this way. And so the whole time that the police were asking him all of these things, he just like kept saying like, oh yeah.
So he's not a credible like witness or suspect at all.
Well, that's up to that like them to decide. So every time that they would ask him a question, at first he would be like no, and then eventually he would say yes. And so like it just kept happening over and over again. And he talked about how he had met Peggy Lowe, the twin of Betty Wilson, the
Yes.
like the widow, and he met her at the elementary school where she worked and where he had done some carpentry work. After he did some work at her house, according to White, Mrs. Lowe became infatuated with him and spent hours talking to him on the phone. Gradually, she began to talk about her husband and hint that she would like to see him killed. A short time later, though, she dropped the subject of her husband and began talking about her sister who wanted to hire a hitman. White pretended to play along, saying he knew someone who would do it for $20,000. Mrs. Lowe told him that it was too expensive. Her sister was almost broke. Finally, they agreed on a price of $5,000, of which Mrs. Lowe gave him half in small bills in a plastic bag. Gradually, his story evolved, and it included phone calls between him and the sisters, the twins giving him a gun, a trip to Guntersville to pick up expense money inside a library book, and meeting Mrs. Wilson in Huntsville to get more expense money. So, like I said, they just
In
like
a library book?
yeah, they just kept like he just kept like elaborating on the story and like kept getting bigger and more grandiose.
Which
and then
he wasn't even killed with a gun.
so, he said that on the day of the murder, he claimed Mrs. Wilson met him in the parking lot of a nearby shopping center and drove him to her home, where he waited for 2 hours until Dr. Wilson arrived. He was not armed at the time. He stated later that he did not like guns because of his stay in Vietnam. Instead, he carried a long rope. White said that although he remembered struggling with Wilson over the baseball bat, he did not remember killing him. After the murder, Mrs. Wilson returned to the house, picked him up, and drove him back to his truck at the shopping center. He then drove back to his hometown, went out drinking that night with his brother. To prove his story, he led the police to his home where a gun was found that was registered to Mrs. Wilson in a book from the Huntsville Public
shit.
Library. White was unsure about dates, times, specific events, like literally couldn't remember like any details, and the detectives expected that. So they kept trying to figure out the whole story so that they could have enough evidence to arrest the twin sisters. A source close to the case described White after he was brought back to Huntsville as being in physical agony, almost climbing the walls and begging to be given his medicine. The medicine, supposedly lithium, was withheld because it was in a different bottle than what it came in, and White did not have a prescription for it. So, like, their only, like, main guy that's saying that he killed them because
It's probably, like, schizophrenic.
And he's, like, taking lithium that's not even prescribed for him.
Oh, gosh.
So, like, the whole time I was researching this, I was, like, really intrigued because I was like, okay, like, are these, like...
Is it him? Like,
is
did
it
he
him?
do
Like,
it? How did they figure it out?
Did the sisters, like, actually
He had
hire
nothing to do with
him?
it, did he?
Can I tell the story?
Oh, gosh. I like to be right, though. I like to, like, say it first. And then
So that,
you, like,
like,
prove
we
me
can
right.
prove it?
Yeah.
I'm going to edit it out.
Secretly.
She was looking to edit in that she is right. She was like, oh, I got it.
Like, later on, I'll dub in, like, oh, was it da-da-da-da-da? Because with the da-da-da in the study with the candlestick. Obviously.
It's always the
Because it is the
candlestick.
candlestick.
Yeah, it's always the candlestick.
Definitely the candlestick.
Also, I know that we joke around about editing things out, and I've had multiple people ask me, like, how much do you guys edit out? Like, how long does it take you to do these episodes? And I'm like, we literally don't edit, like, barely anything out. Like, we just edit out when we ramble too much.
We take a lot of time, though.
Yeah.
And by we, I mean
TT.
me. And so let's not, like, take this very lightly. I do a lot of work.
Yeah, but I'm saying, like, what we talk about,
Really,
it's not like,
like
we're
very
annoying.
organic.
A lot of
Yeah.
annoying sounds, like, and I'll edit out.
Right.
But only for the viewing, or the
So we're not
listening
annoying
listeners'
to you.
pleasure.
But that's what I'm saying. Like,
We don't, like, edit out big blurbs or anything.
Exactly. That's what I
getting-
tell people. I'm not saying that
No,
we
it's
don't
very,
do a
like,
lot of work.
conversational.
into this,
Yeah, come on, guys. Give me,
No,
you know.
TG definitely does a lot of work to make us sound good, but we just talk, and so everything that you do here is organic. So I just have to say that.
I might edit this out.
I want people to know. People keep asking.
No, it's a good question.
And I'm drunk, so I hear it in my mind, and I'm like, oh, I should tell people the answers. Let's just go off on tangents.
Oh, God. Can you edit out that fucking laugh I just did?
No.
That was
Definitely
really
not.
gross.
Ha ha. Okay, so
A minute.
who do we think did it? I'm about to arrest somebody.
I
The
think
sister,
the twin
the twin
sister.
sister.
The twin
Peggy.
sister did it for sure.
Okay, so Betty Wilson gets arrested for murder of her husband, and it exploded like a bombshell. Like, everybody was talking about it in Huntsville. It was a huge thing because she was a super, like, well-known socialite, and her husband's estate was rumored to be worth almost $6 million. Adding fuel to the flames was the report that she had helped host a fundraiser for a popular political figure the night before the murder. Huntsville is a small town, especially during political seasons, where rumors and gossip can be passed around so quickly that the daily newspaper is already dated when it hits the streets. So everyone's talking about how she's a gold digger, and she, like, they were like, oh, I heard her say that she was going to kill her husband, and oh, I heard her say this, and all of these people are just like, all of the gossip.
Yeah.
It makes me think of, like, a movie with Julia Roberts, you know, like Something to Talk About.
What?
No?
Is that a movie?
Yeah.
Oh, no,
I don't
no,
think I saw
don't know.
that.
Oh, man.
Just Eat, Pray, Love.
Well, they talk, like, her husband's cheating on her, and everybody talks about it all the
Notting Hill?
time. No, Something to Talk About.
Oh. America's Sweetheart?
No!
Pretty Woman.
Let's just name all the movies.
other ones, but not
Ocean's
that one.
8. Oceans.
Oh, I have to see that.
I haven't seen it yet, but I'm
Wait,
excited about
Was
it.
she in that?
Yeah.
I saw it. I don't
Ocean's
remember her
8?
being in it. The new one? With
Yeah.
the ladies?
Yeah. Pretty sure she was in it, wasn't she?
I don't know. I never saw it.
Maybe she wasn't. Maybe it was Sandra Bullock.
It was Sandra
It
Bullock.
was Sandra Bullock.
Julia
I don't
Roberts
think she
was
in it.
in Ocean's 11 and 12.
Yeah, as what's his face's like
Wife.
right? Yeah.
Okay.
Let's get
Anyway,
on something to talk
Okay,
about.
let me keep going. She probably wasn't in Ocean's 8 because I didn't see it. And I get her and Sandra Bullock.
Kate Blanchett was in it.
Oh, I do love her.
Anna Hathaway.
Rihanna.
Rihanna. Mindy.
You've been in the South too long, TT.
Sandra Bullock.
Okay. So most of the talk was centered on alleged numerous sexual encounters, and the news media like started blowing up this whole thing about how she was having all these affairs, and like there were newspapers and magazines and television shows from all across the country that were trying to follow along with the story. They were trying to like make it into a movie. They were trying to do all of these things. And the case became even more political when the DA agreed to a controversial plea bargain for White, which would give him life with parole, possible in 7 years, which that doesn't make any sense to me, in exchange for helping convict the sisters.
So the sisters as both of them. Like
Both
it was
of them.
like a...
Yes.
So both of them were on trial?
So
I thought only one. Betty was the only one that's like arrested right now.
she was the only one that was
Okay.
arrested.
Where's Peggy? Where she
So
be at?
the murder charge. At the hearing, the prosecution successfully argued that because Betty Wilson was a beneficiary to her husband's will and the fact that she had sexual affairs was enough to prove the motive. A tape-recorded confession of James White provided the evidence. After a brief hearing, both sisters were ordered to stand trial for murder. Peggy Lowe was granted bond and released after her neighbors put up their homes for security. So she must have been like a really nice person because her neighbors gave her bail, which I think is crazy. I don't think I would ever like post bail for my neighbor.
Nope.
I'm sorry, no.
I don't know my neighbors.
Especially
I don't
for
either,
fucking
but I definitely
murder,
wouldn't,
or
like-
at least conspiracy for murder.
Yeah, I would probably. I guess I just always think that you did it, so I'm not
Yeah.
gonna.
Yep.
I'm like,
right.
sorry about it. Betty Wilson was denied bond and remained in the Madison County Jail until her trial. So during the time that she was in jail, the rest of the family members from Dr. Wilson filed suit to deny Betty Wilson access to his estate. So she would no longer get all of the money.
Who did?
I guess the rest of the family.
Okay.
I'm sure that I
Just
didn't
curious.
find all of the details about that.
Yeah,
but
I would assume that.
if
would be the
they
rest
were the ones that filed, then I'm
Yeah.
sure that they were like, hey, she doesn't deserve this because she probably murdered him. So we should get the money. So there was like a whole thing about how James White and Betty Wilson were having an affair together. So the wife and the guy that they think killed the
crazy
husband.
guy.
Yes. Yes.
Sorry.
And so, but there was no one had ever seen them together. There was no physical
just
evidence at all
conspiracy.
whatsoever.
Interesting.
So during the trial, before the trial, James White was in his cell and he was thinking about it and he was like, oh, all of a sudden I remembered this huge piece of evidence that I totally forgot to talk about. And so he tells the police that he totally forgot to tell them that he changed his clothes in the house and he put it in a bag and he and now all of a sudden and it also was in the same bag that he had received the money from, and he just had this epiphany of oh, I forgot to tell you these things. And so officials explained that the clothes not being found during the initial search was because the police dog had an allergy. And
You'd think that would be on the resume.
you would
if you
think
have
that
allergies, you can't work as a
be
police dog.
police dog. And so they found the bag of clothes exactly where White said they would be. And the forensic people were never able to establish if they had been bloodstained or if they even belonged to White. So they think that...
But how else would they find those?
Well, they think that he might have talked to someone and put and had them like placed inside the house
Oh my.
so that he could like make his story legible.
Why though? Because he wants to go to prison? Like, what is this?
Well, because he's trying to say that the twins were the ones who hired him to like kill the guy. So if he is able to
So he
make
gets a
his
lesser
story
sentence.
more legible,
understand.
then he's able to get out in 7 years instead of spending life in prison. Because the fact that they were never found beforehand when the police went through the whole house, and then now all of a sudden it's kind of like that movie or that show on Netflix, How to Make a Murderer, where they like don't find anything, and then all of a
they
sudden
found the
they're
key.
like, oh, the
Yeah.
key is just right
Oh,
here,
yeah, it's right
in
here.
plain sight.
It's got
Like,
blood on it.
Yeah, how did we not see this before?
Yeah.
It kind of reminded me of that. A lot of people think that it was
he didn't.
because, he wanted to have his credibility and he didn't want to like have the electric chair because they believe in that or they
Alabama.
did at the time in
Yeah.
Alabama. I don't think that anybody does the electric chair anymore, but I don't know. And so during the trial, there was never in the history of Huntsville had a case generated so much controversy and news coverage. Because of the publicity, the judge ordered the trial to be moved to Tuscaloosa. Roll Tide.
No.
Sorry, Linda. We're
No
drinking
rolling,
Auburn
no
wine.
tides.
Sorry, when I said that, I had to drink it again. Oh, dang. Y'all are, like, enjoying this wine.
Yeah, there's a reason
Scone.
that I am tipsy.
I can't drink and focus at the same time, but it's really good. It tastes like juice. I want to keep drinking it. Okay, so during the trial, they were trying to figure out who's telling the truth. Like, because there's 3 people saying different things. And I believe that there's 3 sides to every story. There's like, he said, she said, and then, the truth.
It's the truth. Yeah. What
So-
you said.
I'm just going to go through like all the different things that they talked about. So the prosecution argued that it was a murder for hire, but the defense claimed the fact that White did not carry a weapon with him made the story unbelievable. The prosecution argued White's testimony was credible, where the defense argued he had changed his confession so many times it was unbelievable. It was unbelievable and had fitted his testimony to fit the prosecution's case in order to escape a possible death sentence. The prosecution argued White's testimony was corroborated by records of phone calls and the library. The defense argued there was another explanation, but they didn't give what the explanation
Oh, I was going to be like,
was.
what's it?
Yeah.
What is it?
I don't know.
What's it?
What's that?
What's it?
The prosecution argued the gun was given to White by Betty Wilson and Peggy Lowe. The defense claimed he stole the gun and offered the fact that the empty box the gun came in along with the shells was found in the home afterwards, which is a good argument, I think. The prosecution offered a witness who claimed to have seen James White and Betty Wilson near the murder scene within 30 minutes of one another. The defense argued the witness was not credible because she had not been able to pick White out of a lineup.
They should all get life sentences. What are we arguing over here?
The prosecution claimed the timeline proved their case, where the defense argued the timeline did not fit. The prosecution offered a witness who claimed Mrs. Wilson had talked about wanting to kill her husband, where the defense argued the story was not credible because it had happened almost 6 years previous, and the woman had continued to be friends with Mrs. Wilson. But I mean, do you think that if I said that I was going to kill Mark, you guys would still be friends with me?
No.
Yeah. I would. Sorry, Mark. I'd definitely still be friends with you.
Are you
Because
serious?
I'd talk you
mean-
out of it.
But like, I mean, if I was just
No.
like, oh, I think I'm gonna have like Mark murdered.
We
Like,
we had this
you're
discussion the last episode though. Like
Did we?
it's
about
what
killing our husbands.
no when it was about. Was it about killing our husbands? Yeah.
Was it?
What was it about?
Well, I don't recall this.
It was about if your husband killed your best friend,
Oh, yeah,
would you
yeah,
still
yeah.
love him? We had that
Oh, yeah.
conversation.
different though.
Why is that totally?
You wouldn't
different?
still
Because
love me if I
I
killed my
love
husband?
Amanda like a husband.
Yep. Well, we see who our true friend
Yes.
is.
Yeah, I would piece the fuck out. Y'all are crazy.
I would talk you out of it, and I would bring you back to a normal place.
But
and
the
be
fact that she came to that conclusion and you could just move past it and be like, remember that one time that you wanted to hire somebody to kill Mark?
listen,
maybe I was kidding.
I know people who have mental illness, you know, like I don't
That's
take
not mental
it lightly.
illness.
That is, it can be.
That's not just like I'm depressed, I'm anxious, I have OCD, I have schizophrenia. Like that's I want to take someone else's life, somebody that I know and I love.
Yeah, but what does that stem from? Sometimes it can stem from being mentally ill.
Okay, I still don't justify that being friends with somebody that
Amanda,
wants to kill their husband.
I would still be your friend.
I would
Thank
not.
you, TG.
I'd piece the fuck out.
We'd figure this out
F you,
together.
Mandy.
And I'd call the police. Sorry.
I
Not
literally
sorry.
just watched a Seinfeld episode about this like last night.
Did you?
Yeah.
What happened?
Well, like Jerry and Kramer were getting into big arguments, and Jerry was like, "Would you call the police on me if I killed someone?" And Kramer was like, "Yes, 100%." Jerry was like, "Really? You wouldn't be my friend?" And he was like, "No, I would call the police
I would
on
call the
you."
police.
Help you
Danielle.
bury the body.
Yeah.
Depending on the situation.
Well, I know who I would call then.
Yep.
Good.
TG.
Don't fucking call me. I'm busy that day.
I also am glad that you guys went on a fun tangent so I could drink a little bit more of my wine. Okay. The defense offered a witness who stated she had received a message from Dr. Wilson on her answering machine after the alleged time of death, but the prosecution argued the call would have been made earlier. So there's all this hard evidence, and everyone agreed that a central theme of the prosecution's case was to paint Betty Wilson as a cold and immoral woman who wanted her husband dead. And to prove this, the prosecution paraded a stream of witnesses who testified about hearing her curse and belittle her husband. Other witnesses testified to having knowledge of Mrs. Wilson taking men to her home for sexual liaisons.
Oh. Rendezvous and such.
So, perhaps the most dramatic part of the trial came when a black former city employee took the stand and told of having relations with Mrs. Wilson. Although the prosecution denied playing the racism card, observers of the trial all agreed it had the same effect. And this is Alabama, so
Yeah. Still in the 90s. Like,
yeah, 92 or
Yeah.
93. Real shitty. So the case went to jury at 12:28 on Tuesday, March 2nd, 1993. After deliberating the rest of the day and much of the following day, the jury returned with a guilty verdict. Jurors later revealed that the deciding factor in their decision was the telephone records. Betty Wilson was sentenced to life imprisonment without parole. So 6 months later, Peggy Lowe stood trial for her alleged part of the murder for hire. Much of the evidence was almost a repeat of her sister's trial with the same witnesses and same testimony. But on her side, the witnesses who stated that two people may have been involved in the murder, they cited that the lack of blood splatters on the wall, the experts theorized the murder probably occurred some other place than the hallway and was caused by something other than a baseball bat. For the defense, the most crucial moment probably occurred when White testified that Betty Wilson picked him up at the murder scene between 6 and 6:30 on the day in question. This was an hour later than had previously been testified. If the jurors believed White's story, it would have been impossible for Mrs. Wilson to have participated. But the biggest difference in the trials were the people being tried. So Mrs. Wilson seemed to be the reincarnate of everything evil, but they portrayed her sister as everything like wonderful. So she was compassionate and church going, and she was the woman that everybody like that she helped all the less fortunate, and everybody was like, "Oh, she's so wonderful." And though it had been difficult to get people to testify and on Betty Wilson's behalf, Mrs. Lowe's jurors heard a steady parade of witnesses extolling her virtues. So you have one sister who like nobody wanted to like testify for because everyone was like, yeah, she was kind of bitchy and she wanted to kill her husband. And then you have the other sister and everyone's like, oh, she was so great. Her neighbors try to they
bailed her out.
Yeah, they put up their
I think she
houses
did
for
it.
her like bail.
Peggy. Which is
And,
also my mother's name.
Oh, hey, Peggy.
Peggy.
The jury deliberated for only 2 hours and 11 minutes before finding Peggy Lowe not guilty. The jurors cited James White's lack of credibility as the major factor, which I think is kind of interesting because I don't think that you can find one sister guilty and
the
one
other one
sister not guilty. And one is because...
Well, obviously you can.
Well, I mean, they did, and there's no double jeopardy.
Yeah.
But the fact that they had this, like, uncredible witness who said that he's the one that, like, did it and said that both of the sisters were involved.
Right.
What happened was that Peggy Lowe can never be tried again, and Betty Wilson is serving life without parole. And she works in the sewing department and spends her free time writing her supporters. Her case is being appealed currently. And James White is serving a life sentence in Alabama. And he is in trade school and receiving counseling for drug and alcohol abuse. And he talked about it for a long time and then eventually just took the Fifth Amendment and stopped talking about it. And is waiting for parole.
We didn't talk about how if Betty and James had gotten married, she'd be Betty White.
Oh, man.
We did not talk
That
about
is an
that.
important
Yeah,
detail.
we really missed that.
Well, if they were actually having an affair,
Right.
Yeah.
It's possible.
then maybe that's the whole reason
I
that
think
it
Peggy
started.
did it.
Well, she was found not guilty at all.
I know, but I straight up think, like, they tried to bring in this unstable, mentally ill man to knock off some of the responsibility or, like, the blame. And I think she did it.
You think that she did the
I
whole
think
thing?
she actually killed him.
Because he doesn't remember doing it.
Well, you
I
know,
think she did it, and they were trying to brainwash him, saying, "This is what you did. Do you remember this?" Like, you know, like trying to like feed him details, and then he fed these obscure details to the police, which is why it didn't make sense because it didn't actually happen.
maybe. But also, our justice system is a little bit screwed up.
It's skewed,
so-
yeah,
But I thought it was a really interesting...
skewed.
I thought it was
Skewed
super
and
interesting.
screwed.
Yes,
And I just want to say thank you, Linda.
Yeah, thanks, Linda.
Like, for giving us the wine and for telling me which... She gave me two options, and I chose this one, and I was like, wow.
She
this
gave
is
you
really
2 wine
interesting.
options and 2 crime options.
and you drank
Okay,
both.
So she gave me the wine and said, here's for your podcast. And then, like, 2 weeks
And then you
later,
drank
she gave
it.
me the other wine. And she gave it to me on my last day of work at my old place of employment.
Still not over it.
And I used it to celebrate. Sorry about it, but not sorry at all. So, y'all suck.
All right,
And
well,
don't
let's...
even start. This wine is delicious. You're
It
already
is,
done
it
with
is.
yours.
Yeah, I'm
TT,
almost done.
You're
and
right.
you're basically one sip away from
You're
being
right, but
done,
I feel like
Mandy.
I'm
if
always
the
one
white-
sip away. You know what I mean?
If the white wine was this good, the red wine is probably 30 times
Amazing.
better. Because
30
red is
times.
always better than white.
I take the Fifth Amendment.
How was it, Amanda? Tell us.
Yeah, thanks.
It
Since
was
you
all
already
delicious.
tried it.
It was actually very good. But I didn't get to drink as much of it because my husband kept pouring more into his glass because he really liked it.
Well, he knows what's important in life.
Mark.
So what are
It kind
we...
of segues into what Taylor and I are going to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
At one point, it like really segued, and I was like, "Oh, maybe this is going to be it," and then it wasn't.
Oh,
But it's okay.
okay.
Taylor and I are going to talk about the death penalty.
Which, let's start off by like talking, how do you feel about it? Because I think it's a very controversial
as a broad,
topic.
like vague, broad.
Broadly, like,
yeah.
what
How do you feel?
think about the death penalty?
Okay, so this is what I feel.
Okay.
I'm a very biblical person, so I think that if you kill someone, you should probably just be killed too. But I feel like we can't judge people because there have been so many people that have been put to death
Exonerated.
that aren't guilty.
Yeah.
And there have been people, and I also don't want to ever feel like I have
But
to
also,
choose.
it's biblical to turn the other cheek. So what's
Yeah, what's
Well,
know what I mean?
there's multiple things. It depends on what it's for. But like they talk about like one of the 10 commandments is do not kill. So then I feel like we're also breaking it by killing the person that killed someone. So I don't know how I feel about it. Like I feel like it's one of those things that I don't want to be the one to judge. I also like think that there have been times in my life where I'm reading about a murder or like a murderer and like the things that they have done to someone, I, as a human, want them to experience those same things. Like,
But-
especially people that do things to like children and like just innocent people,
Yeah.
that they like totally like destroy their lives. I feel like you should, like, if you punish someone and you like make them go through all these things, I want you to go through those same things, because I want you to understand what you put through.
But do you
someone.
think lethal injection is painful? Because it isn't.
No, I don't think that.
That's the humane way to
That's
do
like
If
the
I
most
believe in-
humane way to die.
Exactly.
And that person,
If I believe in the death penalty, I do not believe in lethal injection, because I feel like it's just like, here, let me lull you to sleep. I think that if you do something to someone, actually, okay, real quick, since we're going off on this tangent,
Yes.
my friends and I have come up with the perfect solution to the death penalty. And because I have no idea what you guys discussed, but I'm just going to go off on my tangent real
Get it.
quick. So I believe that there are way too many people that are sitting on death row that are taking our tax money, and that we're having to like pay for. And if they are horrible people or not, I don't know, because I don't want to be I did not go into that line of work because I don't want to have to judge people for that. But I think that we should have a Hunger Games. And me and my friends have all come up with this.
Oh my
And the
gosh.
Hunger Games all are people on death row. And that if you like win, then you don't die, but you're still on death row. But that would get rid of so many people
Amanda,
that are just sitting there.
Do you
also-
realize that it actually costs more to put someone to death than to keep them incarcerated for 40 years?
Well, no, because I haven't really researched all of this. Like
This
you
is what I'm
guys.
saying.
you know.
So
But I'm
that
saying-
point is
But wouldn't you
moot.
love to watch them just kill each other?
No,
Because
I
I
don't think so.
think that they should live.
But what about the ones that are
I think they
innocent
should
and
live
they're on death row by accident?
That was
Well,
your first
hopefully-
point.
Yeah, hopefully they survive.
Oh gosh, you're
Oh,
crazy.
man.
Wow. Remember when I said that I would help you with murder or like bury the
you
body
already
or
said
something? Now I'm taking it back.
Nope, you already said it.
Yeah. Well, that's
So many things that I
left
think
field.
should happen.
That
And
was left
I want
field.
you guys all to let us know if you agree with my Hunger Games.
Don't write us in for that.
Personally, I very much disagree with that. I don't think that, because there are so many people who are innocent who are put to death and then exonerated. How many were there? 169? Is that what you got?
The ones that were innocent.
Since 1973, 160 people have been released with DNA evidence because they're innocent and they were on death row, which is crazy to me. And in my own opinion, I do think sitting and stewing with your own terribleness is far worse a life than,
See, that's
getting
what
lethal
I agree
injection
with.
and going to heaven or wherever you're going. I don't know. Obviously not heaven, whatever. But dying and being peaceful. That's the easy way out. And I
Yeah.
think being able to sit and think about those victims and think about what you're doing now and how
And,
you're
like,
eating
get
mush.
cancer or some
Did you
shit.
see
You're-
Did you see the there was a documentary on Eileen Wuornos
Yeah.
Yeah.
and how crazy she went? at
she
the
was
end?
crazy.
And she was like, she was not normal. She like murdered people, but
She had
like when
crazy
she
eyes.
She
when
was,
she
she was personable though when she
when
first
she
started
got
interviewing.
when she first got arrested to where
Yeah.
to when she like got
She went
sent
crazy.
it, like when she like actually got put to death,
Yeah.
like how crazy she went on like by herself in her like solitary confinement.
Yeah.
That's what I think is so nuts.
Well,
She
what's
was
funny
crazy.
too is it's been like a big bell curve through the years, starting with like mid 70s, where there's like 0 people on death row or 0 people getting, put to death. And then up to like almost 80, there are 2. And then 84, there's 21, 95, 56. And then in 1999, there's a total of 98 people put to death in America. This is just American statistics. But that was the height of our amount of people we're putting to death in that year. And now it's all the way back to just 23 in 2017.
Yeah, I
so
think
it's been a very strange, like...
the highest was in the 1930s.
Oh, I started
was-
at 70.
Well, I
So-
actually started way back in the 18th century.
I assume there's far more back then when it was like okay and people went and
Well,
watched and...
Yeah, and they also it wasn't
Green Mile.
it wasn't so much that it was okay. It was just that like they used
was normal.
execution for everything. Like they used it for stealing. They used it for
Then they would cut off people's hands, and it was
yeah,
a lot
it was,
more.
It was way more brutal.
Brutal, yeah.
I think okay, so in the 10th century, hanging became the usual method of execution in Britain, and Britain ended up influencing America's use of the death penalty more than any other country. So we got a lot of our ways of execution from Britain. The first recorded execution in the new colonies in America was that of Captain George Kendall in the Jamestown colony of Virginia.
Jamestown.
In 1608, yeah.
What are they famous for? Jamestown.
Like a lot of American history.
Yeah,
Oh, it's
something
it's one of the
crazy
first
went.
colonies.
Yeah, it was
Okay.
like
He was a spy for Spain. So, treason. Cyanide gas was introduced in 1924. These are just like bullet points for before 1970, since that's kind of when you started.
Yeah, I think that's when it became more of a regulated thing.
Yes.
It wasn't like, oh, seize them and behead them. It was
Right.
more like, okay, you have to go through a court of law, and then you're put to death.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If we decide that that's what's supposed to happen to you.
Yeah.
They tried to pump this guy's cell. The very first guy, I think his name was G. John, was the first person to be executed by lethal gas, which then they used in, like the technology was used in Germany, obviously,
Yeah.
the Holocaust. But they tried to pump the gas into John's cell while he slept, but that was obviously impossible. So then they created the gas chamber, and that's when that happened. Was in the 1920s. And then in the 1930s was the highest in American history of an average of 167 executions per year.
Yikes.
wow.
Yeah, I think in the 1960s it was started to be challenged as cruel and unusual punishment.
Yeah. And then by, I think it was like 74, 75, they started
More
regulating it.
yeah, regulated.
How many states do the death penalty?
30 have the death penalty and 20 do not, have abolished it. So the ones that don't are like a lot of northern states, honestly, like Alaska, Connecticut, Maine, Iowa, Maryland, New York. There was a, list of 20, but I didn't want to write them all down.
50, and this is worldwide. This is a statistic from 2016. 56 countries retain capital punishment, which is execution or by death or whatever. And 103 countries have
abolished
completely abolished it.
Yeah.
And in that same 2016 poll, 60% of Americans support the death penalty. So you're one of the 60%.
Okay, I said that I support it on certain levels.
Yeah, in a game.
Well, I don't know. I don't know how I feel
That's
because
silly.
I am not one to like. I don't think that I would ever make the choice to put someone to death.
Right.
And that like I hope to never be in the
Like a
position.
juror.
Well, the jury doesn't. They just find them guilty or not guilty. The judge decides if they become like put to death or not.
Are you sure?
I'm pretty sure.
I think it depends on the trial. There's also a trial of penalty.
Because they'll take
sometimes the
jurors
jury-
out who don't believe in the death penalty
Right.
sometimes because they want, you to condemn them. I think to death.
I feel like people should not. I feel like that's what the judge does.
Well, so a judge is just a person. Like,
Yeah.
how do we give these people more,
we vote for them.
Yeah, fuck
well, look
this
at
shit.
Kavanaugh.
Yeah.
So right now there are 2,743 inmates as of April 1st, 2018 that are on death row, like right now. And do you know the state that has the highest amount of executions?
Florida.
Texas.
Texas.
I actually just guessed. I don't actually have that statistic.
555. Virginia was second with 113. So it's literally it's like 5 times as much Texas has than the ones that are trailing behind. Oklahoma and then Florida with 94.
I was gonna say Florida's pretty high.
Texas was the first state to use lethal injection in 1982.
I do think if someone's going to get the death penalty, I don't know. I really am. I'm pretty not for it.
I guess
but-
I've always lived in states that are for it, so
Yeah.
I've never had to like really think about it.
Yeah.
So,
I just honestly, it's cheaper to house someone and feed someone for 40 years than it is
And have
to
them suffer.
and have them suffer with the conscience of
Do
sitting
they
there.
actually suffer?
Yes,
though?
and they get raped, and they get
Not
like
always.
not
no.
always, not
but
always.
The thing is
Or they get solitary confinement,
Multiple
which is
people,
bad.
like I think that everyone thinks that people get raped in prison all the time, but they like save you
but
from
people
that.
do. People definitely
I
do.
don't think
And
it's
then
Especially like people who have like crimes against
No.
children.
Oh,
crimes
yeah.
No,
against-
they're separated.
And they get murdered
I have
with-
researched this multiple times. They are separated from the people that are going to murder them. I'm not saying.
well,
I'm not
how
like,
do you know who's going to murder who? They put
Well,
all the
usually-
child molesters together.
Yeah, usually because they
do
know
get
that
bunked
other
together.
people. Yeah, because they know that other people are going to kill them.
It doesn't mean that bad things aren't going to happen to
But
them.
then again, they're literally sitting in a cell for the rest of their lives.
Like, I'd
A
rather
cell.
have that.
As they should.
And they're eating corn, and they're eating like mushy oatmeal.
Well, and they just like they have to deal with being in prison. Like
But
you
then
don't.
again, there's also reform. Like I understand murder is terrible, but I don't believe in eye for an eye. I don't think that that's
Okay.
the way to do anything. If somebody punches you, you shouldn't punch them back because that's just an endless cycle of punching.
No, I'd
It
I
should
feel
be-
like if I got
somebody
punched, I
punch,
would
and then
punch
you're
them
like,
back.
Okay, I'm taking the high road with this.
No, I would 100% punch you back. Which is
but
why I
with-
believe
Well, if
in
it's
the
my
death penalty,
brother,
I guess.
it's the same thing. I would punch him back. But this is like taking someone's life is a larger.
Okay.
I think it affects more than just the person who's getting lethal injection. The person who's giving it has to go home to his wife and be like, "Oh, I killed somebody."
They chose that life, though. They chose to become that person that does that.
But did you know that the death penalty does not make a difference whether people are murdering? There's like let me find the statistic that I found.
I don't understand what you're saying.
The fact
Like, it's
that
not
there
a
is a death
deterrent.
penalty, it doesn't deter people from murdering. They're going to do it anyways, apparently.
But my aunt is from Singapore. And they like 100% are like an eye for an eye. So if you do anything
Asia
like,
is scary.
like Singapore is so strong about an eye for an eye, and they are like the lowest in
Like murder
crime.
rate?
Yeah.
China's probably the worst. So it has 1,000 plus per year.
Well, that's why I said Singapore and not China.
No, that's what I'm saying. Asia is really bad with that. Singapore, Asia, Thailand. There were a
Middle East is so
couple.
bad.
Bad at what? Like killing people?
Yeah, they have the
Because if
most.
you kill someone, they kill you.
If you steal someone, they kill you. If you do this or that, there's multiple things that you
which
could
is
do.
why their crime rate is so low.
But they're killing 1,000 plus people a year.
Which is less than if that's all they're killing, that means that there's only 1,000 people that are doing bad things. Do you know how many people live in those countries?
But is that okay for you? Are you saying that that's okay?
I'm not choosing it.
Okay, I'm telling you that this is not okay. I'm not down with it. I don't think 1,000 people who like randomly steal bread from a whatever should be put to death for something.
I think that if we raised our if we had more if jail wasn't so easy to live in, I feel like our crime rate wouldn't be so high.
What do you mean easy to live in?
I feel like people go to jail all the time and they have no problems. We talk about this on our podcast all the time, that people just go to prison for murdering someone and then they get out in a couple years. It happens all the time. Mandy's nodding her head. I feel I feel like if I'm not saying that we need to kill people, but I do think that
it's black and white with this. You either are okay with people killing people or you're not. I don't think that there's a middle ground. I think it's you're okay with it happening or you're not okay with it
So
happening.
some folks have said that retribution with execution is simply revenge and that it cannot be condoned. And that's where your biblical, and I'm not just saying it's biblical, but I'm also saying, so that's just some people's moral compass is you can't kill because you're doing the exact same thing that you're punishing this person
Yeah.
for, which makes you just as guilty. But others have accepted that retribution as an element of criminal justice. They argue that life without parole is a sufficient substitute. So they're saying that it is equal. You killed this person, now your life gets taken away, your freedom
But
gets
you're
taken
yeah.
away, which is your life. I mean, if without freedom you don't have a life.
I guess I would agree with that 100% if people actually didn't get out again.
But it's on both ends. So people get out randomly for no reason, but there are also people who didn't actually do it who are in jail. So it almost balances it out, which doesn't make it okay. But I think for the most part, if you obviously did it, you are in jail for life and you're not getting out.
That's what I can hope for.
Yeah.
Yes. I feel like
that's what we all can hope for. That's
Yeah.
what we're hoping the justice system will turn into, where
feel like
we can figure it out.
I feel like our justice system needs a lot of work.
It does.
Well, and with more and more technology coming forward with DNA evidence and, you know, more definitive answers where it's not just all this circumstantial, like he said this, so now you're going to jail and now you're going to be sentenced to death. Like, we've come a long way. We still have a long way to go. But, you know, I don't think that the death penalty should be abolished. I don't know how I feel about it, honestly. I think
it's a hard
I have a
thing,
weird moral
yeah.
compass thing where it's like, yes, this person should die because they killed children. Yes, because they killed another person. Like, it doesn't matter, I guess. They took a life, but also it's just as bad. It's almost more punishment to me to see them rot in jail.
Yeah.
So that's my thought.
That's where I am too. Like,
Yeah.
I think like some people I'm like, yeah, you should definitely die, but like then I wouldn't ever want to be the person to do it, and I wouldn't want to like have someone else do that. So like that's where
It's almost-
it's like it's a hard.
It's almost like the way we are with meat. We want to eat it, but then we don't want to know where it came from.
I know exactly where mine comes
Oh, I have
from.
no problem eating. I grew up on a cow farm, so I have no problem eating.
I go hunting and stuff.
I do.
Yeah.
But that's okay. There's a difference between going hunting where an animal is like frolicking and has
I
had a
grew
good
up
life,
with friends who had meat
and then
farms.
there are like
We
pigs
also
who
raised
have like
bison to kill for meat.
pigs who have like absolutely no room to, and they slam them up against walls, and they like, I've watched too many videos of like meat farms to be okay. But then so the different methods of execution: lethal injection, electrocution, gas chambers, hanging, which apparently in 2015 they still do it in Iran, Malaysia, Pakistan, and there was one in Washington State in 2015. There was a hanging.
Also, Egypt, India, Singapore,
Yeah, I didn't
Yemen,
wanna
Pakistan,
write it all
Afghanistan. Well, I screenshotted it to say the ones that happened in 2015.
Yeah, like I feel like a lot of Middle Eastern countries still do very like hanging. They do firing squads.
And
They do beheadings in Saudi Arabia still.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of those like take the Bible very literally, because whenever you look at any of their things, they talk about
Or the
Bible
Quran.
or the Quran, like very literally, like this is this is that.
And 22 juveniles have been executed, but in 2005, apparently Roper versus Simmons struck down the death penalty for minors, which is probably a good thing, I think. If you're like, 12 years old and you murder someone, I feel like death after just 12 years might be
Too young.
too young. Yeah. To know. You're too young to know.
I mean, who made you decide to do this? Like, where did you get the idea for this?
Well, also there's like that one girl who's in jail for killing her rapist. Like, that pisses me off. She's
And
still in jail.
there's always like
This
those
was like last year.
the ones that are the exception, which makes it even scarier to be like, yes, let's put people to death, because you never know when someone's actually innocent.
Yeah.
So
True
that's
that.
scary.
I think it's a hard topic. It's a hard it's a hard discussion to have as like humans, and like right or wrong and what like we believe.
Like,
And-
is
What
it humane?
Like the basic human instinct is to stay alive.
Yeah,
That's
survival.
it. Like, survival is the basic human instinct down to our core. So it's like, to take that away from someone else, that's where
But
your
people have
morality is like, what am I doing? What am I thinking? How could I think this? But also, how could this person take a life and walk freely? Or at least stay alive.
Yeah,
And we have no problem putting dogs down if they bite someone. Like we
I
have no
do.
problem with animals.
Well, that's like a whole other.
yeah, that's
a whole
like
other
another
chapter.
topic. I feel like
To
I
me.
don't know.
No, I know. But like
Because
they're like
humans are trash and dogs are perfect. So
but we kill dogs like no tomorrow.
We don't.
Well,
People
we as
do.
humans.
Yes, and I disagree with that as well. But that's a whole nother day, another dollar.
All of the discussions we got
So many things we did.
Yeah.
What about women though? Apparently, less than 2% of people on death row are women.
That's just
That's 'cause
prison
we're perfect
statistics.
angels.
It's also statistic.
I was gonna say,
it's
how
also,
many
like
prison-
how many women
No,
actually
guys,
like commit the crimes.
It's
that men do.
because we're perfect.
Okay, we're angels.
Uh,
But also, there's like Eileen,
But
Eileen
Eileen
Wuornos,
is
yeah.
one. Can you name like
and
7
Evil
serial
Genius,
killers?
and
Well, women aren't.
Women are not
predominantly
violent.
serial
and
killers.
Gertrude
Or
Benazowski.
if we are, I'm just gonna put this out there in the universe. If women actually are serial killers,
We do a
they're
way
just
better job
too
of it.
smart.
Yeah.
and
Well, the thing
so
is,
much better.
we know how to
that
get blood out of
don't
anything.
get caught where men get caught so easily.
Think
dumb.
about population in general. We encompass, I think we're more than 50%, right?
No, it's
No,
almost 50-50.
I think it's almost
Okay, so
50-50,
if
yeah.
we're 50%, but we still are only 2% of what's on death row, that's got to say something.
But I
Women are
think-
far less violent.
Well, I think that like shows in our discussion right now because I feel like if we were 3 dudes in this podcast right now, they'd be like,
kill them. Yeah.
kill 'em, done,
Kill 'em,
dead.
chop their head
Yeah.
off. Yeah, I wish we
But-
had public hangings again.
Yeah, let's go back to Henry VIII.
Yeah.
Like, it's,
Yeah.
but like women, I think in general are more
We're empathetic.
empathetic.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's part of our DNA. Like we have no control over that. And I think that comes with the like being mothers.
Yeah.
You know? Like I think like it's part of our like
We want to take care of
humanity.
other
Yeah.
people.
yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Where guys are more like fight for living.
Yeah, and protecting their
protect-
families
yeah.
and stuff.
And that like I think that's I mean it's part of our I don't know if that can go into a whole discussion of like society versus like
Nature versus
nurture.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we've had that
but like
in a different way. Yeah.
so that's
Well,
interesting.
that's all I had.
I think that's interesting.
Yeah, I jumped around a little bit, but I
Makes me-
think we got it across. Like,
Makes me think
yeah.
of the Green Mile though.
yeah.
Oh man,
Uh,
one of
then
my
when-
faves.
When they don't like when the like
Yeah.
psycho man doesn't wet the
On purpose
sponge
because he's a
like
psychopath.
because
that.
he's a psycho.
but we hope we didn't like offend anyone with all of our crazy views.
Yeah, everybody has an
on all the
opinion.
things.
Well, and we all have. That's what I think is so great about us as friends is that we
we're
all have
completely
so
different.
different yeah, like such different views.
Yeah.
But we're all gonna hang out and
Although
drink wine together.
it did
after
get
this.
real weird and quiet when I brought up meat, but it's fine. We'll talk about that
Because
another
it's like
day.
such a
Well,
vastly
yeah,
different
I mean,
discussion. It's not that like
but what's funny is it reminds me of the same thing. Like people don't want to think about death or people going on death row.
I
or,
guess I have
you know.
no problem with eating meat though, so maybe that's why I have
Yeah,
no
and
problem with
why
the
Well,
death
that's why it
penalty.
was weird
I was
because-
like, I know exactly what
because both of you. But the
Yeah.
thing is, you don't know where all the meat you get from the grocery stores from.
no, I
you
know it comes from meat farms.
but you know where
watched
the meat
farming. I
from
became-
your farm comes from, and
Yeah.
you know the meat where you hunt comes from. But those hot dogs you're eating, where the fuck
I don't
did
eat
that come
hot
from?
dogs because they're
But that's
horrible.
What yes. Why are they horrible? Because they're
Because-
mixed up hooves and
Well,
stomachs.
it's just
and
everything together. That's
Well,
why I don't eat.
it is pretty
I don't
gross.
eat hot dogs, so I choose
And
which
videos of
meat
it, like-
to eat. Yeah.
Yeah.
I also don't eat tilapia because it's not a real fish.
It's a fake fish. They
Yeah,
farm it.
the
just for
government
people to
created
eat
this
it.
fish, so I don't eat it. So I have no problem eating the thing and I don't eat pork because it makes me sick and it's not good.
yeah.
But you eat bacon?
No, I try not to.
I eat bacon, but I
like
hate
bacon.
thinking about those poor pigs.
I don't really eat
Just-
bacon. It makes me sick. I'll eat bacon when people offer it to me,
Yeah.
but at home I don't eat it. Mark eats it, but I don't. But like I don't know. I have no problem eating the turkey and the chicken that I buy.
Yeah.
And I know that it comes from a farm. And I watched Farm Inc. and I became a vegetarian for 2 months. And then I had some serious health issues. So now I just think about how these animals
protein.
were put on this earth for me to eat them. And I am okay. Mandy gave me a thumbs up and Taylor gave me a nasty look. So
There was no nasty look in there.
well, it was like a.
I just smiled
you
because
smiled 'cause
there's
you were
no
like,
way for
oh my
me
God,
to
yeah.
we can't
argue
find
about it.
common ground on this discussion.
But we all eat meat.
We do.
I occasionally eat meat.
Even TT.
I've
Chicken sausage
recently
all the time. I've seen it.
But I've recently gone to veggie sausage. That's pretty much all we use now.
Did I convert you guys with
You
that
did.
delicious
It's really
veggie
good.
sausage? It's really good.
It's
I don't eat
almost
sausage in
literally.
general.
But
I
it's
think
veggie
I would say
sausage, so,
it's
like,
made out of vegetables.
It's really good.
But like, what is the casing?
It tastes like
No
there's
casing.
no casing.
no casing at all. It's
It's really
delicious.
soft,
and
but it's like
yummy.
it tastes
I
like
think
smoky.
There must be like apples in it or something.
Yeah, it's apple sage.
What is
Oh,
this?
it's so good.
Apple
I'll show
it's
you.
called Farm
You need to tell
something.
the
I just bought
viewers
some.
too.
Farm Fresh or Farm something. I know it has farm in it.
It's apple sage veggie sausage, but I
You
can't
can
remember.
find it literally any
There's
any
4
grocery
links
store.
in a pack.
I'll eat that.
It's
And it's
so
like
good.
I
$4.
try not to eat a lot of meat, but I do get sick, so I have to eat a little bit. or
We've
I'll
literally
pass out.
started eating veggie sausage and a bunch of beans and like garbanzo beans and like all the things. And it, makes up for the protein that we're not eating.
I eat eggs every day. All right, guys. Thanks for hanging with
Yeah,
us.
thanks for. We definitely left this on a lower note.
Yeah,
than
that's
we've been
God,
trying
this is
to.
terrible.
So
I feel
sorry
awful
about it.
now. I
follow
feel really
us.
bad
Follow
about
us
life.
on the social media
Media.
at Pop Crime and Wine, or email us if you want to sponsor an episode with a bottle of wine, or send us some moolah. You can do that at popcrimewine@gmail.com. Just reach out to us if you want us to talk about like a certain crime or whatever.
Or a topic.
Or topic.
We are trying to find more like discussions to have. And I think that we are pretty good at finding them, but we also want some
Sometimes we struggle.
direction sometimes. So if you have something fun for us to talk about, please let us know.
Thanks, y'all. And as always, we will
See you next Tuesday.